So I know some of you listening might be a little freaked out about the Unilag FBA 311 exam,
Yeah.
especially since they changed it to all theory this year. I've seen a lot of people online saying just read and pray to God.
Yeah. Trust God for the best.
But how about while we're doing that, we try to understand some of these concepts from FEMI Module 1 lecture about business information systems.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we can't know exactly what questions will be on the exam.
Right.
But understanding these core principles of BIS can really help you analyze and answer anything that comes your way. And it's important for way more than just the exam, really. It's about how businesses use technology and information to thrive, which is something anyone in the business world should know.
Absolutely. And for anyone who's looking for some extra help, I suggest checking out the eLearning Cooter YouTube channel. They got some really great videos. So let's get into it. What are business information systems?
A lot of people get this confused with just information technology. But think of it this way. IT is the toolkit, the hardware, and the software.
Okay.
BIS is about how we use that toolkit strategically, how we manage and leverage information.
So it's not just about having the newest gadgets or anything like that. It's about how we use those gadgets to actually achieve business goals.
Exactly. FEMI Module 1 lecture talks about 6 main objectives that drive companies to invest in BIS.
Right.
So like one example is operational excellence. Think about Walmart and their incredibly efficient systems that connect all of their suppliers and stores.
Right.
That's what lets them handle these huge amounts of products and transactions smoothly.
It's really mind-blowing how they make it all work so seamlessly.
It is.
Then there's also using BIS to create new products, services, and even a whole new business model.
Exactly. Like Apple, they revolutionized music distribution with iTunes.
Oh, yeah.
And then they continually innovate with new products like the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad.
Right.
All of those are built on very sophisticated information systems.
Yeah, it's incredible how much we rely on these systems without realizing it. What about building stronger relationships with customers and suppliers?
That's another key objective.
Okay.
FEMI Module 1 lecture calls it customer and supplier intimacy.
I like that.
For example, you've got the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. They use their information systems to tailor guest experiences to people's individual preferences.
Oh, wow.
And then on the supplier side, JCPenney streamlined their interactions with suppliers in Hong Kong, which helped them reduce costs and improve efficiency.
So it's about using information to make sure everyone benefits to create those win-win situations.
Exactly. And then you've got improved decision-making. So managers, right, they make tons of decisions every day.
Right.
And having access to real-time data can be crucial.
I bet.
FEMI Module 1 lecture mentions Verizon, for example.
Right.
They have this digital dashboard that provides managers with up-to-the-minute info on customer complaints, network performance, and any outages that are happening. So they can make decisions super quickly.
It's like having this bird's eye view of the entire organization.
Well, exactly.
So what are some of the other objectives?
Okay, so there's competitive advantage. And this usually comes from achieving the previous goals that we talked about.
Right.
So companies like Apple, Walmart, and UPS, they use information systems to be better than their competition.
Makes sense.
Whether it's through better products or lower prices or even just faster delivery times.
So it's like information systems can be a make or break factor in a competitive market.
Yeah. And finally, their survival. Sometimes information systems aren't about getting ahead, but just staying in the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about like when Citibank introduced ATMs back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
It was revolutionary at the time and essential for them to remain competitive.
Right. Sometimes it's not about being fancy, it's about adapting.
Exactly.
Okay, so now that we have a better idea of what business information systems are for, how do they actually work?
So imagine it as a continuous cycle with 4 key activities: input, processing, output, and then feedback. Figure 1.2 in FEMI Module 1 lecture illustrates it really well.
It kind of reminds me of baking a cake.
Okay.
You have all the raw ingredients, which is like the data. Then you process it, you mix and bake the ingredients, and then you get the final product, which is like information.
I love that analogy. Figure 1.1 shows how raw data from sales, for example, can be transformed into information that is actually useful for a business.
Right.
But just like baking a cake takes more than ingredients, successful businesses need more than just the technology.
So you're saying the human element plays a big role.
Huge.
Okay.
Femi Module 1 lecture talks a lot about the importance of people and organizations in BIS.
Okay.
It's not just the machines, it's the people who design, build, maintain, and use them. It's about the organizational structure, business processes, and the culture of the company.
All of that influences how effectively these systems are used.
Exactly. For example, the lecture talks about UPS.
Wait a
They have this very strong customer-centric culture, and that is embedded into their information systems. It affects how they collect and use data to make deliveries super efficient, how they track packages, and how they provide excellent service.
So their culture makes their information systems more effective.
Yeah, exactly. It shows how the culture can really make or break how useful information systems are.
So it's not just about having the technology, it's about having the right people and mindset to utilize it properly.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, can we talk a little more about the difference between information systems, literacy, computer literacy, and MIS?
Absolutely. A lot of people find those terms a bit confusing.
I can see why.
So computer literacy is, knowing how to use a computer and basic software.
Okay.
Information systems literacy is a step further. It's about understanding how information systems actually work within a business.
Okay.
It's about using them to support decision-making and solve problems.
So, like, anyone can learn how to drive a car. Right. But information systems literacy is more like understanding how a car engine works and how to maintain it.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Okay.
Then MIS, or Management Information Systems, is a whole field focused on the development, use, and impact of information systems from a manager's point of view.
Okay.
So it's about using information systems strategically, aligning them with business strategy, and ultimately gaining a competitive advantage.
So MIS is like the strategic level of using information systems.
You got it. And Femi Module 1 lecture also makes a point of saying how important skilled people are for all this.
Right.
It's not just for building and maintaining these systems, but for using them well. Employee attitudes and a good work environment can make a huge difference in how well people utilize information systems.
Makes sense. Happy employees are productive employees.
Exactly.
And what about the role of managers? What do they need to know about BIS?
Managers are super important. Femi Module 1 lecture emphasizes how they're responsible for identifying challenges in the business, then setting strategies and allocating resources to properly utilize information systems.
So managers kind of have to understand both the business side and the tech side of things.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's their job to make sure the information systems are actually aligned with the overall goals of the business. Figure 1.3 shows how the organization, the people, and the technology all work together.
Yeah, it shows that it's not just about the technology, it's about how it fits into the bigger picture.
Exactly.
So now that we've covered the human element, let's talk about the actual technical side of things.
Right.
What are the building blocks of all these information systems?
So IT infrastructure. The lecture defines it as the foundation on which these systems are built.
Okay.
You can think of it as the building blocks, which are hardware, software, data management, networking, and then telecommunications.
So all the stuff that allows the information to flow.
Exactly. And then we have things like the internet, the web, extranets, intranets, and then tools for voice and video communication.
Right.
These are key parts of modern business information systems.
It's a whole ecosystem of technologies working together.
Yeah, it is. But let's focus on how we can use all this to actually solve problems.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
How do we apply all this knowledge to real-world situations?
Femi Module 1 lecture introduces this 4-step model for problem solving.
Okay.
It starts with identifying the problem, then designing a solution, making a choice, and then implementing it. It gives you a framework for tackling problems systematically.
Okay, so first we identify the problem. That makes sense.
Right. It's about, recognizing that there is a problem, then defining it really clearly, understanding the root causes, and figuring out what resources you have to address it.
So it's not just saying, oh, there's a problem. It's about going deeper.
Right. The lecture actually lists some common problems, organizational problems specifically, things like outdated business processes, or a culture that isn't really supportive of using new technology,
Right.
or even internal conflicts within the organization. And of course, you've got the ever-changing nature of the business world, increasingly complex tasks, and often just not enough resources.
Right.
All of these can stop a company from properly using information systems.
So sometimes The issue isn't the technology itself, but how the organization works, its structure.
Exactly. And then there are technological
Right.
problems, things like outdated or insufficient hardware and software,
Yeah.
or maybe your database doesn't have enough capacity,
Right, right.
or maybe your telecommunications are lacking, or you have incompatible systems. And then, technology is constantly changing at a crazy pace.
It's hard to keep up.
It is. And of course, we can't forget about people problems.
Oh, yeah?
Like maybe employees haven't received proper training,
Uh,
or it's difficult to assess how well they're performing, or maybe there are legal and regulatory compliance issues,
right.
or the work environment isn't great, or the management isn't effective, or there's just a lack of support for employees.
Right.
All of these can lead to problems with information
It
systems.
really shows how important the human element is in all this.
Yeah,
Like, you could have the best tech, but if the people aren't trained or supported, it's not going to be effective.
exactly.
Okay, so once we've identified the problem, what's the next step?
Solution design.
So we've diagnosed the issue, now we need to figure out how to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. The key here is to think of as many different solutions as possible to get a broad perspective.
Kind of like a brainstorming session.
Exactly. You explore different possibilities before settling on the best approach.
I that.
Then comes the evaluation stage and making a choice.
Oh, okay.
You have to weigh the pros and cons of each solution, consider things like cost, whether it's actually doable, and how long it's going to take to implement.
Right, so choosing the solution that best addresses the problem, taking all those things into consideration.
Exactly. And then finally, there's implementation. This is where you actually put the solution into action.
So not just coming up with a plan, but actually doing it.
Exactly. So, you acquire and set up any necessary technology, test it to make sure it works, train your employees, manage the changes that come with it, and then, of course, measure the results and gather feedback. You got to make sure it's actually working.
So it's not just a one-time thing, it's a continuous process.
Yeah, exactly. FEMI Module 1 lecture emphasizes that problem solving is ongoing. Sometimes your solution doesn't work as expected or new problems pop up. You have to adapt.
Right, because the business world never stands still.
Yeah. Figure 1.4 in the lecture actually gives a good visual representation of this four-step process.
It's a good reminder that we need to be flexible in how we approach problems.
Now, before we go any further, let's talk about critical thinking.
Okay, because it's important to think things through before jumping into a solution.
Exactly. FEMI Module 1 lecture really stresses how vital critical thinking is to avoid making costly mistakes or wasting resources.
So what does critical thinking actually look like when we're talking about business information systems?
It's about being a bit skeptical, not jumping to conclusions, and considering different points of view.
Okay.
Looking at things from the perspective of the technology, the organization, and the people involved.
Right.
It's about being data-driven, gathering evidence, and trying out different options before you commit to something.
So basically, be thoughtful and analytical. Don't just go with your gut.
Exactly.
Okay.
The lecture outlines 4 key parts of critical thinking: maintaining a healthy dose of doubt, being aware of the different perspectives, testing your options, and using your past experience as a guide, and then acknowledging limitations, both of the organization and of yourself.
So approach problems with a clear mind and be willing to challenge what you think you know.
Right. And that leads us to the big question. How does all this relate to your future career?
Because at the end of the day, we all want to be successful in the real world.
Absolutely. FEMI Module 1 lecture highlights how important it is to understand BIS no matter what area of business you're interested in.
So no matter what we want to do, information systems knowledge is key.
Exactly. So let's start with accounting.
All right.
Accountants rely heavily on information systems, like for summarizing transactions, creating financial records, and organizing data, doing financial analysis.
Using technology to make their jobs easier.
Right. Today, accountants need to know about databases and networks, online transactions and reporting, and just generally how information systems can help them do their jobs better.
So it's not just about crunching numbers anymore. It's about understanding the technology behind it all.
Yeah. Now, in finance, the connection with information systems is so strong that some experts recommend finance majors double major in IS.
Wow, that really shows how important information systems are in finance.
It does. Finance professionals, they need to know how to use information systems for reporting, making investment decisions, and implementing strategies for cash management.
Right, they need those technical skills to be successful.
Yeah. And they also need to understand how to plan, organize, and implement information systems strategies at an organizational level.
So they're not just using the technology, they're thinking strategically about it.
Exactly. Now, what about marketing?
Okay.
Marketing and advertising have been transformed by technology, probably more than any other area in recent years.
It's all about data-driven marketing, right?
Exactly. Marketers use databases all the time to track customer behavior, how well products are performing, customer feedback, and product development.
Wow.
They also rely on enterprise systems for managing products, their sales force, and customer relationships.
So it's using information to really understand customers, to target them better, and to build those relationships.
Exactly.
Okay. And what about operations management, both for services and manufacturing? It's all about making sure that production and delivery of goods and services is smooth and efficient,
Right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So professionals in this area, like production managers, admin service managers, and operations analysts, they really depend on information systems to do their jobs effectively.
So they need to understand the technology that's used.
Exactly. And they also need to know how to use databases and analytical software to manage and optimize resources.
So it's about using technology to make operations smoother, more efficient, and less expensive.
Exactly. And then there's management in general.
Right. Because good management is essential for any organization.
Absolutely. And today, it's almost impossible to be a good manager without a good understanding of information systems.
Because technology is everywhere in business now.
Yeah, exactly. Managers need to be comfortable using all sorts of systems, from everyday tools for productivity to more complex applications that help to coordinate the whole organization.
So they need to be tech-savvy leaders.
Exactly. What about the field of information systems itself? This is for the people who are passionate about actually building and managing the systems that power businesses.
That sounds like a really dynamic field, always changing.
It is. It's a fast-paced career that's always adapting to new technologies.
So it's perfect for people who love to learn and take on new challenges.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Key skills for people in IS include being able to utilize new and emerging hardware and software to achieve those 6 business objectives that we talked about.
Right.
They need to be on the cutting edge, understand new tech, and know how to apply it to real-world problems.
Right.
They also need good leadership skills to design and implement these new information systems within businesses.
So they're not just tech experts, they're leaders.
Right. The lecture also mentions outsourcing and offshoring, which are big trends in the field.
Right. Hiring other companies to handle some of the IT stuff?
Yeah, either domestically or overseas.
Okay.
Things like programming, maintaining systems, and even call centers are often outsourced.
Right. It's a way for companies to get specialized help and maybe save some money.
Exactly. And while some people worry about job losses because of outsourcing, it can also create new opportunities, especially in management.
Because you need people to manage those contracts and make sure everything runs smoothly.
Right. And no matter what your major or career path is, there are some BIS requirements that are important for everyone in the business world.
What are the must-haves for anyone entering the business world today?
The most important thing is to understand how IT can help achieve those 6 business objectives we talked about earlier.
That-
You also need a good grasp of databases and how they're used.
Because data is crucial for any modern business. Right.
Exactly. You need to know how to manage and analyze it.
Okay.
You should also be familiar with things like business analytics and intelligence systems.
So using data strategically.
Right. And today's work environment is all about collaboration. You need to know how to work effectively with IT specialists and systems designers.
Because we can't be experts in everything, so knowing how to work with people who have different skills is essential.
Absolutely. And finally, understanding the ethical, social, and legal implications of information systems is incredibly important.
Right. Things like data privacy and cybersecurity are huge.
They are. It's about using technology responsibly and being aware of the risks.
Okay, so we've covered a lot today, from the very basics of business information systems to how they affect different careers.
We've emphasized the importance of problem solving, critical thinking, and ethical considerations.
I think after all that, we're all feeling a little less stressed about the FBA 311 exam now.
I hope so. But it's important to remember that this knowledge is valuable for way more than just passing an exam. It's about understanding how information systems are changing the world of business.
It's about being prepared for the future and using technology to make a positive impact.
Exactly. So keep learning, stay curious, and embrace the amazing possibilities that information systems have to offer.
And don't forget to check out eLearning Tutor on YouTube for more help.
Great suggestion. They have some fantastic resources.
Now let's take what we've learned and look at a fascinating example from FEMI Module 1 lecture,
Okay.
UPS, and their incredible use of information technology.
Yeah, UPS, they're like ninjas when it comes to delivering packages, always on time, like they know every street in the world.
Right.
Their success is really tied to their sophisticated information systems.
Okay.
The lecture asks some interesting questions. First, what are the inputs, the processing, and the outputs of their package tracking system?
Let's break it down. The inputs would be all the data about a package, right? Where it's coming from, where it's going, how much it weighs, the size, any specific instructions for delivery, stuff like that.
Right. Then the processing, that's where they use all that data to figure out the best delivery routes, track the package's movement, and try to predict any potential delays or issues.
And then the output is the information customers get about their package.
Exactly.
Whether it's online tracking, email updates, or text messages.
It's a seamless flow of information that keeps everyone in the loop.
It's like magic, but it's really just brilliant technology.
Yeah.
What kind of specific technologies do they use, and how does it connect to their overall strategy?
They use GPS a lot and mobile devices to keep in touch with their drivers. Plus, they use really advanced algorithms and data analytics to optimize those delivery routes and predict delivery times really accurately.
They really have figured out how to make delivery efficient.
They have, and it's all driven by their strategic business goals. The lecture points out how their information systems help them achieve those goals.
So it's about using technology strategically, not just having cool gadgets.
Exactly. What strategic business goals do you think their information systems are helping them achieve?
Well, operational excellence has to be a big one. They're all about being efficient and on time.
Absolutely. Their system allows them to handle tons of packages, optimize those routes, and minimize delays, which saves them money and makes them more profitable.
And customer intimacy is probably important too, right? Keeping customers happy and in the know.
Exactly. Being able to track packages and get updates gives customers peace of mind. It builds trust.
It's about building long-term relationships. So operational excellence, customer intimacy. What else?
And don't forget about competitive advantage. Their information systems give them a huge edge over their competitors.
Like they're playing a whole different game.
Now, the lecture asks a really interesting question. What would happen if their information systems suddenly went down?
Oh man, it would be chaos. Right?
Complete chaos. Everything would stop. Packages would be lost. Deliveries would be delayed. Customers would be furious, and their reputation would be destroyed.
That's a scary thought. It really shows how much we depend on information systems.
It's like the circulatory system of a business. If it stops working, everything shuts down.
The takeaway is clear. Invest in your information systems. They're not just an expense, they're a crucial part of your success.
Absolutely. Now, let's get back to the problem-solving aspect of managing information systems.
Okay?
Because technology isn't perfect, and sometimes things go wrong.
That's where that four-step model comes in. Identifying the problem, designing a solution, making a choice, and implementing it.
Exactly. A framework for approaching problems logically.
Right.
And FEMI Module 1 lecture actually goes deeper into the model and gives us some real-world examples of the kinds of problems businesses face.
So it's practical, not just theoretical.
Exactly. So let's start with those organizational problems. These are the ones that come from how a company is run, its structure, and its culture.
Okay.
A common problem is companies that still use outdated business processes.
Even with the latest technology, if you're stuck in the old ways, it'll hold you back.
Exactly. It's like trying to race a horse and buggy against a Formula One car.
Right. You mentioned a company culture that doesn't support technology.
Yeah, if people are resistant to change or don't see the value in new systems, it's going to be tough.
You need buy-in from everyone.
Absolutely. You need to build a culture where people see technology as something positive, not something to be afraid of.
Makes sense. What other organizational problems are there?
Well, sometimes it's office politics. Internal conflicts and power struggles can really derail the implementation of information systems.
Because when people are more focused on their own agendas than the company's success, it creates problems.
Exactly. People can feel threatened by change, especially if they benefit from things staying the same.
It's like a Game of Thrones, but with data and technology instead of swords.
And of course, we live in a very turbulent business environment. Things change so fast.
Companies have to adapt quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And while information systems can help with that, the systems themselves need to be flexible too.
So they need to be able to handle anything.
Right. Then there's the growing complexity of tasks.
As businesses grow, managing information gets more difficult, right?
It does. Information systems need to be designed to handle that complexity.
Like organizing a massive library.
Good analogy.
You have to make sure everyone can find what they need.
Exactly. And then there's the classic problem, not enough resources.
Right, because without funding, the right people, and enough time, even the best ideas can fail.
Exactly. Companies need to invest in their information systems.
They're vital.
Right. So those are some common organizational problems, but sometimes the issues come from the technology itself.
Okay, so now we're talking tech troubles,
Right. One common issue is outdated or insufficient hardware.
like trying to run the latest software on a computer from 10 years ago.
Exactly. You need the right tools for the job. And outdated software can also cause major problems.
Because software with bugs or security holes is a disaster waiting to happen.
Right. It's really important to keep your software up to date. Then there's the problem of not having enough database capacity.
As companies collect more and more data, they need systems that can handle it.
Exactly. Databases are the heart of many information systems, so having a strong database infrastructure is key.
It's like having a big enough warehouse to store all your inventory. What about connectivity problems?
Yes, not having enough telecommunications capacity can be a bottleneck. These days, a slow or unreliable internet connection can really hurt a business.
It's like trying to drive on a highway with only one lane.
Another common issue is that old systems and new technologies don't always work together well.
Trying to integrate systems that speak different technical languages can be a nightmare.
Absolutely. You need to think carefully about compatibility when you're implementing new technology, and then there's the fact that technology is always changing so fast.
It's hard to keep up with.
It is. You need to be strategic about your investments.
Mm-hmm.
Find a balance between trying new things and making sure your systems are stable.
You need to stay ahead of the curve, but also make sure things are running smoothly today.
Ah,
But let's not forget about the human element.
right. FEMI Module 1 lecture really emphasizes that people can be the most important part of information systems.
Okay, let's talk about those people problems.
One of the biggest is a lack of employee training.
If people don't know how to use the systems, they won't be effective.
Exactly. It's like giving someone a fancy sports car without teaching them how to drive. Another challenge is figuring out how to measure performance. It can be tough to tell if information systems are really making a difference.
You need a way to track results.
Right. Then you have legal and regulatory issues. There are a lot of rules about data privacy and cybersecurity.
And companies need to make sure they're following those rules.
Exactly. Breaking those rules can lead to big fines. The work environment itself can also cause problems.
If people are unhappy at work, it's going to affect their performance.
Exactly. You need a positive and supportive work environment, and good management is crucial too.
If managers aren't effective, it's going to create problems.
Poor leadership can lead to confusion and frustration. You need strong leaders to make sure information systems are being used the right way. And it's also important to get employees involved in the process.
If people feel like they're part of the solution, they're more likely to support it.
Exactly. So, as you can see, there's a lot to think about when it comes to managing information systems.
It's not just about the technology. It's about people and processes too.
Exactly. But if you understand these common problems and you use that four-step problem-solving model, you can overcome these challenges.
And remember, think critically. Look at things from different angles, gather information, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Exactly. Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places.
Now that we've covered all of that, let's move on and talk about the different types of business information systems that companies use.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's say we've identified a problem, we've dug deep, we understand what's going on. Now what? How do we start thinking about solutions?
Now the fun begins. This is where we get to be creative. There's almost never just one right answer in business. FEMI Module 1 lecture really emphasizes exploring all the possibilities before you jump into a solution. Sometimes the most unexpected ideas can lead to amazing breakthroughs.
So let's imagine our company's customer relationship management system is a mess. Customers hate using it. We're not getting useful data from it. What kind of solutions could we explore?
Well, one option is to just start fresh. Completely scrap the existing system and bring in a brand new CRM platform, something that's more user-friendly with better data analytics.
So like ripping off a Band-Aid. Just starting from scratch.
Exactly. But that could be really expensive and time-consuming. So we have to weigh the pros and cons carefully.
Right, of course.
Another option is to keep the existing system, but try to make it better. Add some new features, maybe streamline the user interface, or try to integrate it with other systems so we can get more data.
So more like renovating a house instead of demolishing it and building a new one.
Exactly. That might be easier on the budget. But what if the old system just can't handle those
Yeah,
changes?
good point. What if it's just too outdated?
Right. And then there's the question of expertise. What if we don't have the in-house knowledge to do a major overhaul or implement a brand new system?
We bring in the experts.
Yeah.
We outsource it, right?
Exactly. Outsourcing lets us focus on our core business while experts handle the specialized work. So we've got a few different options on the table. How do we choose the best one?
Okay, so that brings us to the next stage of problem solving. Evaluating those options and making a choice. We need to look at each possibility, weigh the pros and cons, and make a smart decision.
Exactly. FEMI Module 1 lecture mentions some key factors to consider. The cost, whether it's actually feasible with our resources, and how long it will take to implement the solution.
Cost is always a big factor in business.
It is, and it's not just the initial cost, it's the ongoing costs too, maintenance, training, support.
It's like buying a car. The price tag is one thing, but then you have to think about insurance, gas, repairs,
Yeah.
all that.
Exactly. Then there's feasibility. We have to be realistic about whether we have the resources, the skills, and the infrastructure to actually make this solution work.
Right, it's no use having a great plan if you can't actually do it. What about the time factor?
Time is important too. Some solutions you can implement quickly, but others might take months, even years. We need to think about how long we can afford to wait.
So it's about finding a balance between what we need, what we can do, and how quickly we need it done.
Exactly. Once we've carefully considered all those factors, then we can choose the solution that's the best fit for our situation.
Okay, so we've made our decision. Now what?
Now we move on to implementation. We take that plan and make it a reality.
It's one thing to have a good idea on paper, but it's another thing entirely to actually make it happen. What does implementation involve?
It's a whole process. Acquiring the technology, setting it up, testing it, training employees, managing the changes it brings to the company, measuring the results, and getting feedback to make sure it's actually working.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It is. You need good planning, communication, and collaboration to make sure implementation is successful. And even then, as FEMI Module 1 lecture reminds us, problem solving is never really done. You have to keep an eye on things, make adjustments, and be ready to adapt to new challenges.
Right, always stay flexible. But hold on, before we even get to designing solutions, we have to really understand the problems we're facing.
You got it. FEMI Module 1 lecture talks about those common problems companies encounter with BIS. And it's not always the technology itself that's the issue.
So what are some of the common problems?
Let's start with those organizational problems. The problems that come from how the company is structured and how it operates. For example, some companies are still stuck using outdated business processes.
Even with the best tech in the world, if you're doing things the old way, you're not going to get very far.
It's like trying to race a horse and buggy against a Formula One car. Then there's company culture. If the culture doesn't support technology, it's going to be a struggle.
You need everyone to be on board with using new systems.
You do. You have to create an environment where people see technology as a positive force, not something to be afraid of. What else? Oh, sometimes it's just plain old office politics. Internal conflicts and power struggles can really get in the way.
When people are more worried about their own position than the company's success, it creates problems.
Right. Change can be scary, especially for people who benefit from the way things are, and we can't forget about the crazy, constantly changing business environment we live in.
Companies have to be able to adapt to survive.
Exactly. Information systems can help with that, but those systems have to be flexible too.
Like a ship that can handle any storm, not just calm waters.
Perfect analogy. Then there's the growing complexity of tasks. As businesses get bigger and more complex, it's harder to manage all that information effectively.
It's like trying to organize a huge library and make sure everyone can find the book they need.
That's a good one. And then there's that age-old problem, not enough resources.
Right, you need funding, the right people, and enough time to implement new systems effectively.
You do. Companies need to realize that information systems are an investment, not just an expense.
They're crucial for success.
Okay, so those are some common organizational problems. But sometimes The problems come from the technology itself.
All right, let's talk about those tech troubles.
One common issue is outdated or insufficient hardware.
Trying to run the latest and greatest software on a computer that's ancient history.
Right, you need the right tools to do the job. And just like hardware, outdated software can cause major problems.
Software with bugs or security vulnerabilities is a disaster waiting to happen.
You're right, it's important to keep your software updated. Then there's the issue of database capacity.
Companies are generating so much data these days, they need systems that can handle it all.
They do. Databases are the foundation for a lot of systems, so you need a strong database infrastructure.
It's like having a warehouse big enough to store all your inventory. What about connectivity problems?
Yeah, not having enough telecommunications capacity can really slow things down. A slow or unreliable internet connection can be a huge problem for businesses.
It's like trying to drive on a highway with only one lane.
Exactly. Another common problem is when old systems and new technologies just don't work well together.
Trying to get those systems to talk to each other can be a nightmare.
System integration can be very complex, so you have to consider compatibility issues very carefully when you're implementing new technology. And then there's just the constant rapid pace of technological change.
It's hard to keep up.
It is. Organizations need to find a good balance, embrace new innovations, but also make sure your systems are stable and reliable.
Right, you don't want to jump on every new trend, but you don't want to fall behind either.
Mm-hmm.
But technology is only as good as the people using it, right?
Exactly. FEMI Module 1 lecture makes that very clear. The human element is incredibly important.
Okay, let's talk about those people problems.
One of the biggest is simply a lack of employee training. If people don't know how to use the systems, they're not going to be very effective.
It's like giving someone a powerful tool, but not showing them how to use it properly.
Right. Then there's the challenge of evaluating performance. It's not always easy to measure the impact of information systems.
How do you know if they're really making a difference?
You need to define clear metrics and performance indicators. You need to track the result.
Right, you need data to know if it's working. What else?
Legal and regulatory compliance is a big one. There are so many rules about data privacy and cybersecurity these days.
And companies need to follow those rules.
Absolutely. Breaking those rules can lead to huge fines and damage your reputation. Even the work environment itself can cause problems.
If people are unhappy or stressed at work, it's going to affect how well they perform.
Exactly. A positive, supportive work environment is really important. And of course, you need good management.
Right. Without good leadership, even the best system can fail.
Exactly. Poor management can create so much confusion. You need strong leaders who can make sure information systems are being used in a way that supports the company's goals. And don't forget about the employees themselves. Getting them involved in the process is crucial.
If people feel like they're part of the solution, they're more likely to be on board with it.
Exactly. So we've seen that there are a lot of potential problems when it comes to information systems. But if you understand these common problems and you use that four-step problem-solving model, you can overcome those challenges.
And always remember, think critically. Look at things from different perspectives, gather evidence, and challenge your assumptions.
Exactly. Sometimes the most creative solutions come from the most unexpected places. Now that we've covered all that, let's shift gears and talk about the different types of business information systems companies use.
All right, let's break it down. What are the systems that help companies manage all that information and make those important decisions? All right, so we've talked about the problems. Now let's get into the different types of systems that companies actually use to manage all this information and make decisions.
Yeah, let's do it. FEMI Module 1 lecture breaks these systems down into different categories based on what they're for and what level of the organization they serve.
So like different systems for different purposes and different levels within the company.
Exactly. At the most basic level, you've got your operational level systems. These are your transaction processing systems, or TPS.
How does those do?
Think about the everyday transactions that businesses handle. Sales, payroll, inventory, shipping, all that stuff. TPS are designed to record and process those routine transactions. Make sure they're accurate and efficient.
So it's like the foundation of the company's information flow, capturing all those essential bits of data.
Right. Then, one level up, you've got your management level systems. These systems take the data from the TPS and use it to help managers make decisions.
Okay, so what are some examples of those?
You've got Management Information Systems, or MIS. They generate reports and summaries of the operational data.
Okay.
Managers can use those reports to track key performance indicators, identify trends, and see if there are any potential problems.
Well, it's like giving managers a dashboard view of the business.
Exactly. And then there are decision support systems, or DSS.
What do they do?
DSS are designed to help managers make those more complex decisions.
How are they different from MIS?
MIS are more about reporting what's already happened, giving you a snapshot of the past. DSS are about analyzing different scenarios and trying to predict what might happen in the future.
Oh, okay. So DSS is more about exploring different options and possibilities.
Exactly. Really helpful for strategic planning. And then you have a special type of DSS called an executive support system, or ESS.
What's special about those?
ESS are specifically designed for senior executives. They give executives that high-level view of the organization's performance, focusing on those big strategic issues. They often have tools for data visualization and analysis.
So it's like the ultimate command center for top-level decision-making.
You got it. Then, beyond those core systems, you've got systems for specific departments, marketing, finance, HR, all those different functions.
So each department has its own set of tools that are designed for their needs.
Right. And more companies are using these enterprise resource planning systems, or ERP.
What are those?
ERP systems bring everything together. They integrate data and processes from across the entire company.
So instead of each department having its own separate system, ERP connects them all.
Exactly. This makes things more efficient, improves communication, and helps people make better decisions.
It sounds like a powerful tool. But are there any downsides to ERP?
Well, they can be pretty complex and expensive to implement.
Yeah.
And they often require companies to make big changes to their processes and even their culture.
So it's a big decision.
It is. Then we have customer relationship management systems, or CRM.
Right, CRM. We touched on that earlier. It's all about managing interactions with customers and building relationships.
Exactly. CRM systems help track customer interactions, personalize marketing campaigns, and provide better customer service.
It seems like CRM is really important these days. Keeping your customers happy can make or break a business.
It can. And finally, we have supply chain management systems, or SCM.
Okay, what are those for?
SCM is all about managing the flow of goods and services, from the suppliers all the way to the customer.
Okay.
They track inventory, figure out the best logistics, and try to make the entire supply chain as smooth and efficient as possible.
So it's about seeing the big picture, from the raw materials to the final product getting into the customer's hand.
Exactly. And those systems are only becoming more and more important as the global economy gets even more complex.
Wow, this has been really helpful. I feel like we've come a long way. From being totally intimidated by all this BIS stuff to actually understanding it.
That's great to hear. And remember, even though we can't know exactly what's going to be on the UNILAG FBA 311 exam, having this foundational knowledge of BIS is going to be so valuable for answering those theory questions.
It's about understanding the big picture.
Right. And if you're looking for more practice or just want to learn more about this stuff, don't forget about the eLearning Tutor YouTube channel.
Yes, they have some great videos that can really help you solidify your understanding. So listeners, as you keep studying and start thinking about your careers, remember that business information systems are more than just technical tools. They can help you solve problems, make smart decisions, and be successful in any business environment.
That's right. Stay curious, keep learning, and who knows what you might achieve.
And until next time, keep diving deep.